just go ahead. Let me try that again. You'd think I'd be used to that at this point. Good evening, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and start to get into it. As usual with our virtual meetings, we do like to make sure that we are being respectful of everyone's time. So we will move through it at a good pace, but we do have some wonderful content, obviously some very big and important things to discuss when it comes to our Wilmington schools tonight. So we do want to make sure we give all of our agenda, both as it concerns the work of the consortium itself and some other important and relevant things going on in Wilmington and Delaware right now, the time that it deserves. I think we will go ahead and begin with the roll call before we get into our opening remarks as chairs.
I think everyone can put their name in the chat, all the consortium members.
Yeah. Great. Feels like it's been a while. It's exciting to see all the names popping up. Okay. And we may remind folks every once in a while if we see other members come in just to add their names to the chat. Okay, in terms of our agenda tonight, it's been a minute, so Matt and I will just open it up, and we will hopefully, by the time we're done doing that, have a quorum so we can vote on our minutes, and then we are going to do a quick intro for some of our new members, and talk a little bit about our status check, where we are with the work of the consortium itself, and then we're going to hear from both the AIR group on the work they're doing on the funding assessment, and hear from Jim Simmons on the big news and what's next for the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. So do stick with us. I think this is going to be a good meeting. So moving right ahead. Again, thank you for being here for our Redding Consortium full body meeting. It's great always to see everyone. And I just wanted to start out by reflecting a little bit on the mission and the work of the consortium. We have now been in existence for, I guess I'm getting close to for 3.5 years. And we've worked quite meaningfully, I think, to address those original charges that we were given over these past 3 years. And you're going to have a chance to hear a little bit more about that in our Redding Consortium status report. Whether it has been providing slots of full day pre-K, some opportunities in wraparound service provision in some of our local schools, and then of course the data reports that we were able to deliver, monitoring academic achievement for students specifically from the city of Wilmington. Everyone on this consortium and our working groups has worked really hard, very diligently to improve educational equity, talk about what that means, and to empower impacted communities. In 2022 and 23, we're going to continue to focus on advancing our legislative priorities and our work group initiatives. And, as the co-chair of all that's been done, I'm very proud of the work that we've done. I'm excited for us to shine more of a light on what we've accomplished, and do, sort of a status check and accountability check on ourselves. And I'm looking forward to how we will continue to work as a consortium and how we'll be able to work together with other really important initiatives for Wilmington, such as the WLC, but we will get more to that later. Matt?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I don't have a lot to add other than just to sort of preview what I think we're going to be getting some updates on later in the meeting, which is that, as Senator Lockman indicated, some of the initiatives that we had been advocating for with respect to, direct services happening now to some of the kids who we think need them. Some of those are now up and running and operational, and it's very exciting to see, actual kids getting the help that they need. So we'll get some more detailed information about that later on in the meeting, but that is something that we had dedicated a lot of energy to, and it's very gratifying to start to see it play out on the front lines.
Okay. And I think next, how are we doing on quorum? Not yet? Okay. All right, that's fine. We will go ahead and come back to that. If we can put a pin in it and remind us. We're going to do a welcome of members. And before I welcome our new members, I actually kind of want to reintroduce one of our staff members whose name I'm seeing on a piece of paper and going, who's Haley Burns? The artist formerly known as Haley Kasani got married not very long ago. And has a new last name. So congratulations, Haley, from all of us.
Thank you so much, Tizzy. That's so sweet.
And if anyone sees an email that you don't recognize, it is that Haley. It's our Haley. Please answer the email.
Thanks.
So in new staff news, I wanted to highlight, we have a wonderful, wonderful new staff member, Elena Robinson, who you'll see, doing pulling a lot of strings in the background there. Elena, do you want to say hello so your video pops up?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Elena Robinson. I work as a policy specialist at the Institute for Public Administration, and I just joined in June of this year. Really excited to work and support of the Redding Consortium and working with, the work groups and the full body members as well to really advance this really important work. So I'm excited to work with you all and get to know you all better, and really excited for what we can accomplish this year as well.
Yeah, me too. And I could go on and on about Elena's background. She is a Delaware native and really exciting professional experience, but I'll let each of you get to know her, ask her those questions. It's really good stuff. So thank you and welcome to the team. And there we see. Okay, so we do have 2 new members of the consortium itself. So a welcome to Bettina Riveros, who joins us from Christianacare, and it's here tonight. Bettina, if you want to say quick hello.
Hello, everybody. Really terrific to be here. Really appreciate and I'm honored to join the group. You can see my title there. It's really long, so I won't get into it, but lead health equity and government and community affairs at Christianacare. I also am on the Delaware Business Roundtable Education Committee and chair the Vision Coalition. So I'm learning in the space and happy to be helpful in any way I can contribute. This is really important work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bettina. We are thrilled to have you be with us. And then not with us tonight, but certainly with us in spirit is Jennifer Tompkins, who's the new president and CEO of the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. And look forward to seeing her. I will just sort of forecast that we are planning to come together in person for our December meeting. So we'll be able to get to know each other even more then and talk about our vision for the consortium. But these 2 new additions, I think, are a real testament to the fact that we have just a really incredible collection of stakeholders and thinkers here, and that we will continue to be positioned to do strong work as a consortium. Matt, did you want to add anything?
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, great. All right. So I'll let you kick off the updates then, Matt. How about that?
Or do we have, I know we have slides for everything, so that's why I was.
Yes.
Actually, it may make sense for someone from for either Haley or someone else to talk about the status report.
Yeah. So I'll be presenting on the status report.
Okay.
Yep. So the Redding Consortium status report measures the progress of the consortium and addressing its priorities and meeting its goals over the past 3 years. So as Senator Lockman had talked in her opening remarks, the Redding Consortium was created to recommend policies and practices to the governor and the Delaware General Assembly that will achieve educational equity and improve educational outcomes for all pre-K to grade 12 students in the city of Wilmington. And so we've created this Redding status report that would help us track the progress of the consortium and how it's worked to monitor student outcomes, to evaluate the need for change in terms of educational equity, and then lastly, to identify ways to make changes through an equity lens. And so for the status report, the charges that were laid out in the status report were mandated in Senate Bill 148, House Bill 122, and House Bill 436. And so Senate Bill 148 establishes the Redding Consortium as charges. House Bill 222 provides specific actions for redistricting in the city of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County. And House Bill 436 makes updates to the redistricting timeline as of 2022. And so the status report lists the highlights from Senate Bill 148, which are the formal policy items that the consortium is mandated to work on since its initial creation. So we've created this report that outlines the priorities of the Redding Consortium. And so we go through and track each priority, looking at the status of each one. So green highlights that it's been completed. Yellow is in the progress currently. Orange, it's currently in the planning phase. And then red, it hasn't been any action currently reported for that priority. And so for the first set of priorities, it's monitoring educational progress and outcomes for students in the city of Wilmington, as well as all low-income English learners and other students at risk across northern Newcastle County. And so it shall develop and publish data reports on the conditions impacting educational outcomes of these students and track the progress of these students. And so for this particular priority, the Redding Consortium has developed annual policy reports, annual data reports since 2020 in January. And so the consortium has linked these data reports for easy access within the document itself so that the public can read the reports for themselves. And then also these reports are also found on the Redding Consortium's website as well. And our website is solutionsfordelawareschools.com, and you can find that under the resources tab as well. And so another priority is recommending policies and actions to the governor and General Assembly, as we've talked about from the outset, to support the continuous improvement of public education in the city of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County. So the Redding Consortium set out a list of recommendations in December 2020. And so they've done a lot as a consortium to achieve and accomplish these goals. One of the primary ones is ensuring that there's free high quality pre-K services to students in local community centers and also local childcare centers. And so in 2022, the Redding Consortium helped provide full day preschool at Kingswood Community Center, the Latin American Community Center, Aliba Faith Child Development Center, and St. Michael's School and Nursery. Another really great achievement of the Redding Consortium is that it's helped provide wraparound services to the Bancroft School, the Bayard School, and Coomba Academy Charter School. And so this is kind of the concrete work that the Redding Consortium has done to really help empower local school communities and also to help change and promote educational equity within these communities as well. And so this priority is still the same one in terms of looking at the continuous improvement of public education within the city of Wilmington, but this also goes into more of the concrete actions that the consortium has done. And so one of them that is currently ongoing right now is that the Social Determinants Work Group has signed an MOU with the Delaware Department of Education and the Data Services Center to create an equity data dashboard to provide data on Wilmington students. And so this is public publicly accessible dashboard that gathers transparent and user-friendly disaggregated open resource schooling data. And we think that that's really important to really highlight that information and that data and to share it with the general public. And so there are a list of actions that are currently in progress. So that's from providing home visitation programs targeted at mothers, infants, and toddlers living below the poverty line in the city of Wilmington, and also working with the Department of Education to require and enforce developmental screening requirements. It's for state licensed childcare facilities. 2 additional actions that are currently in progress as well are expanding professional development to improve and recruit retention for outstanding diverse teachers in high poverty schools. And lastly, expanding teacher academy programs with the Institutes for Higher Education as well to create a strong pipeline for teachers in high need schools. And so an additional priority of the Redding Consortium is spotlighting best practices from across the state and the nation for increasing educational equity, for improving educational outcomes, and strengthening school and community services. And so the consortium has worked collaboratively with state agencies such as the Delaware Department of Education to implement the recommendations that the Redding Consortium has provided. And so this work is currently in progress as well. And so an example of a best practice that the educator work group has submitted was a grow our own program. And so this is an example of a national best practice that the educator work group hopes to use to improve teacher recruitment and retention in Delaware as well. And then facilitating the collaboration on the implementation of best practices among school districts and charter schools and implementing pilot projects. So we've already highlighted the impact of the full day pre-K services and wraparound services in schools and community centers in Wilmington, and also the work that the social determinants work group has done with the Delaware Department of Education and the Data Service Center as well to create this data equity dashboard, which is really important. And then this is the final slide for the status report. So looking at developing policy proposals to be introduced through legislation and improving teaching and learning in both district and charter schools in the city of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County. So the educator work group and the social determinants work group have supported several pieces of legislation in the General Assembly this past legislative session. And so an example of some of the pieces of legislation that have been supported and that have been passed are House Bill 300, which is a mental health services bill in middle schools. House Bill 301 is a mental health services programs, and House Bill 303, which is the annual behavioral health wellness check. And these are all bills that have been supported by the work groups in the Redding Consortium and have been passed into law by the governor this past legislative session. And so 2 key actions that the educator work group are currently working on with the Delaware Department of Education is creating a critical teacher shortage scholarship for eligible teacher candidates in the city of Wilmington. And so hoping to roll out that scholarship program that would be funded by the Redding Consortium in 2023. And then also working with the Delaware Department of Education to create whole school professional development for schools in the city of Wilmington for the next academic year. So it would be 2023, 2024. And then additional priorities are evaluating the need for educational or alternative educational facilities in the city of Wilmington, including secondary schools. This is currently in the planning stages, but the Redding Consortium staff has gathered information to evaluate the need for additional or alternative educational facilities in Wilmington. And then another priority that's currently in the planning stage would be developing a redistricting proposal. And so the consortium and related work groups have discussed redistricting proposals, but have not yet reached the development or implementation phase of this planning yet. And so, but however, staff has done extensive research on the history of governance in the city of Wilmington, northern Newcastle County, and we've also worked to highlight national efforts for school district change, governance change as well. And then lastly, researching the viability of the Newcastle County tax district and tax pool. And so staff have begun research on the history of the Newcastle County tax district and tax pool, but has not yet determined the viability of this. So the hope is for that this report is a public facing document that is easily accessible and highly visible on the front page of the consortium's website. And so this report is a public transparency resource for those who are interested in the consortium's work. And it can also serve as kind of an accountability metric for the consortium itself, for the work groups to help monitor progress on their projects. And so really excited about this, really excited about the work that the Redding Consortium has done and how we can advance the priorities for next year. And I really look forward to your questions if you have any about the report.
Thank you, Elena. Excellent job. You just dove right in with all the things when you joined the team. So thank you again for that. Yes, we'll open it up if anyone has any questions. I saw a couple good constructive comments in the chat. Thank you, Bettina and Ray, to make sure we'll make sure we clarify that in our records. And I'll just pause for a moment to see if there are any particular questions. Okay. Elena, you did such a great job.
Senator, this is Bettina. I gotta say, it's my first meeting and that was a fantastic overview, Elena. Thank you. Really great.
Thank you.
Good. Yes. Well, we're glad that we're able to bring you on with an overview of sort of where we stand now after 3 years of work, and for anyone else who's joining us for the first time, we just want to make sure people understand what the consortium really is all about. And probably folks noticed, I think, particularly in that last slide, you know, as those of us who've been on the consortium for a while, we backburnered a lot of that governance work, particularly through the pandemic, and we do have co-chairs in that working group area, working with staff again to bring that back to the forefront. So that's something you can expect to hear more about, you know, in the coming months. Okay, I believe we still have that quorum that we reached during your presentation, Elena. So I think we're going to take like just a pause. And Haley, are we going to do this as a roll call?
Yes, sure, we can do that.
Okay, so I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes that were circulated to the consortium members. So I would just be looking for a second.
Second, Darrell. That's from June, right? The June minutes?
Yeah.
Correct.
Second.
Thank you. All right, Haley, you want to lead us through a roll call?
Sure. Aaron Bass. Bettina Riveros.
I have to abstain because I wasn't there.
Yep, that makes sense. Saran Cade. Dan
Is it-
Shelton.
Yes.
Darrell Green.
Yes.
Danye Woods.
Yes.
Ernesto Lopez.
Yes.
Hanifa Shabazz. James DeShane. Jeff Menzer.
Yes.
Jennifer Tompkins. Dave Jezik in for Joe Jones.
Yes, and for Joe Jones, that's a yes.
Thank you. Link Holer.
Yes.
Margie Lopez Waite.
Yes.
Maria Matos. Mark Holodick.
He's non-voting, Haley.
Oh yeah, I just have everyone in alphabetical order.
You're good. These two.
Matt Den.
Yes.
Mike Perzicki. Mike Smith. Namdi Chukwocha. Noel Picara. Ray Jones Avery.
Yes.
Stephanie Ingram. Ted Blunt. Tika Hartsock.
Yes.
Tizzy Lockman.
Yes.
Xavier Mills. Okay, so it looks like with everyone voting yes, that's 13 yeses, so the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And I believe for Cade, we have Nick Conzelman. Am I incorrect in that?
Yep,
Yes,
I'm
he's also
here.
non-voting though.
Oh,
Everyone else
gotcha. Good
included
point.
him.
Thank you.
Excellent point. Well, we've cleared that up in 2 ways. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for helping us get that done. And we will now move into the data report update. So that will be with Kelly Sheretz. Will talk us through the 2020-21 educational outcomes data.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Sheretz, support staff with the Redding Consortium, and I get to bring to you data in the middle of an hour-long meeting. So I will keep this brief and just give an overview of the report. And then we'll put a link to the report in the chat as well. So this report is part of a yearly report that we've been doing since probably the WEAC, maybe, but definitely from WEAC. It's changed in format over the years, hopefully making it better every year. And it has the goal of providing a snapshot of education in Delaware with an emphasis on the city of Wilmington students. Additionally, the report additionally includes demographics of Wilmington students compared to the county and all students in Delaware. We have achievement comparisons when the numbers allow for students from low-income families, English learners, students with disabilities. We use Smarter for all grades except for high school, where we use the SAT. And we also have a section with graduation and dropout rates, and that usually lags a little bit behind the current report, just due to certifications and making sure all the numbers are correct. And then just so we can say, and we say it in the report, these findings are not meant to criticize the city students or the local education agencies. It's just to put out there what the achievement and demographics and everything look like. It's the only report that does this in the state as of right now. Next slide, please, Elena. So just a quick note before you're looking at all the numbers, because of the pandemic, we can't compare anything from 2019 or earlier really to 2021 or the next few years. There was a drop in participation due to the COVID pandemic, but we're still seeing gaps between Wilmington students and their peers, and it's been continual. And for example, in ELA in 2021, on the Smarter, only 16% of Wilmington students versus 42% of non-Wilmington students were proficient. And then in math for 2021, approximately 8% of Wilmington students compared to 26% of their non-Wilmington peers met or exceeded the standards. So next slide. And then kind of the key takeaways, students from low-income families, English learners from Wilmington, as well as students with disabilities. You can read the slide. Many of them were not proficient in ELA or math for the 2020-21 school year. And then just an example of what the figures in the report look like. This is low-income Wilmington family students or students from low-income families compared to their non-Wilmington peers from low-income families. And it just shows you yearly how things look. And again, here's one for math, and you can see we're below standard and meets or exceeds the standard. And in many cases, you'll see that we combined the meets or exceeds standards or the below standard just because our numbers weren't at the 15 or more. So we, for each performance level, so we combine them just to give a snapshot. And then in general, like I mentioned before, we find students are underperforming compared to the general Wilmington students. And if you look at the graduation and dropout rates, there's still gaps between Wilmington and non-Wilmington students, but they have closed since the 2016-17 school year. So with that, I see 2 questions in the chat. I can answer Jim's first and then I'll ask Margie to elaborate a little bit. So Jim, it's by where the student lives, if they live within the city of Wilmington, whether it's their zip code or not, whether by their zip code within the city of Wilmington. We know it's not perfect, but it was the best way we could get the data from the department. And then Margie, do you want to explain?
Oh, yes, Kelly. I mean, I think I thought we were all on the same page over the past couple of years in education about no longer referring to it as an achievement gap, it's an opportunity gap. And so using performance gap is just another play on the same words. So I just wanted to be sure we're being consistent, because it does imply that the issue is with the students as opposed to the system.
Okay. I can change that wording. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We all know that the language matters. That's why we have spent so much time defining our terms. And
Yep.
so thank you for raising that, Margie.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies.
Any other comments well, actually do have a clarifying question. So we know this is students, Wilmington students, regardless of where they're attending school, and how does it, for folks who haven't looked at the report yet, could you talk a little bit about how that's broken down?
So you mean what part is broken down?
I mean, so it's Wilmington, it's students from the city of Wilmington as opposed to based on the schools that they attend. So it's regardless of what schools they attend.
Correct. So we do have a table in there that shows what schools students attend, whether it's within the city, outside the city. We see some even as far south as early college, high school. So.
Okay.
Kelly, I'm sorry. That was the recent data, right? From spring? No,
it was 2020, 2021. We have the most recent and we're in
spring of 21 then, right?
Yes.
Not you don't have spring of 22.
Not yet. We just got it. We're working on that now.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have it earlier this year.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Thank you, Kelly. I think I hope we can share that and have more people take a look at the report. I think it's especially helpful that that's something we've done for so long, year over year, that folks might not realize that we are continuing to do. So we just wanted to make sure we dug into it a little bit and encouraged you to read the whole report and to share that. Matt, I think you wanted to add sort of a little coda to our status updates before we move on to having our guests from AIR.
Yes, I will take my hint from your phrase, little coda, to be very brief.
Yeah.
I wanted to let folks know that with respect to one of the programs that we had advocated for that was funded, which is the wraparound services, before school, after school, summer student wellness center programs. You may recall that those were changed from 1-year grants to 3-year grants, which was consistent with our request. And they've now been, the first round of them have now been awarded. And again, as a reminder, they were eligibility for them was limited to elementary schools that had a minimum percentage of students who were classified as low income. So there were 13 schools in the state that were eligible to apply, and 3 schools received awards: Coomba Academy, Bancroft Elementary, and Town Point Elementary, which is in Dover. So they're all going to, assuming that their programs continue to be approved by DOE, they're going to have 3-year programs. Unfortunately, we did not have enough schools apply for the grant funds to actually use them all, which is disappointing. But what DOE is going to do once they get legislative approval, hopefully in January, is that they're going to put the RFP back out again there's still enough money left available for at least one school to get a grant and possibly two. So the RFP is going to be recirculated in January, and the remaining 10 schools that are eligible will be able to put in for it. And I'm hopeful that that we'll get. So that'll be in January, and but the good news is that we now have 3 schools that will soon have this enhanced programming up and running to an even greater degree than it already was. 2 of the schools had already received 1-year grants, and as I said at the outset, some actual kids are going to be benefiting from these programs going forward.
Matt, there was one question that, since you're on the topic, perhaps you could address about the scope of grades that are eligible.
Hold on, let me try to find the question.
Asked about whether or not high schools had access to it. So maybe
They do not. The legislation is specific to schools that have elementary school aged students. So they can include schools that have students other than elementary age students as well, but they have to have elementary school age students in there, and they're the part of the design is that it will coexist with the enhanced pre-K funding that is also targeted at that same population of students. So over the long run, the hope is that these kids who are in the feeder patterns for these schools that have high percentages of kids living in poverty will be able to get the enhanced pre-K services and then transition into these schools that will also have the wraparound services, and they'll be able to get this higher level of attention, for an extended period of time.
thank you for that. All right. Don't see any further questions. So I think with that, we can welcome Dr. Drew Atchison and Dr. Jesse Levin from AIR to speak to us about the work that they are going to be doing on the independent funding assessment. So I think both are present. So
Elena, if you want to stop
Wow.
sharing, then Drew can share his screen.
awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, before I share, we can just do a quick round of introductions between me and myself and Jesse, and then I'll share my screen and talk a little bit about what we're doing. So I'm Drew Atchison. I'm the project director for the Delaware Funding Assessment, and this was awarded in July, and we've been very busy since then trying to get this study up and going. And one of the things we've been doing is reaching out to different stakeholder organizations to tell them about our study and to also hear from you about your opinions. And I know that in today's meeting, there's not enough time for you all to share your opinions with us, but if any of you are part of other stakeholder organizations and you would like us to come to your organization to present about our study and for you to share some of your thoughts about Delaware's funding system, feel free to reach out and email us. This is a very exciting study for us. Obviously, the charge here is to do a comprehensive assessment of Delaware's current funding system and to make some recommendations for improvement. This is something we've done in a number of states, although in some other states we've done kind of pieces of what we're proposing here. So we're really excited to kind of pull together a bunch of different analyses that we've done individually in other states, and we're putting them all together in Delaware. And I'll talk a little bit about the analyses that we're doing in a minute, but I'll pass it off to Jesse Levin for his introduction.
Hi, my name is Jesse Levin. I am a principal research economist with American Institutes for Research. A majority of my career, I've been with AIR for almost 20 years, and a majority of my career has been spent investigating school finance systems with an emphasis on equity and adequacy. And so the idea is how much must be spent in order to provide an adequate opportunity for all students to achieve the state's educational goals. And that word adequate means a lot of different things to different people. Here, it does not mean minimally adequate. It means adequate to reach the goals that your state has for its students. When we talk about equity, I was going through your site, really impressed with what you put up there, and really impressed with what I've heard thus far in this short while. But our definition of equity is very similar to yours. That is, we want to be able to provide an equitable opportunity for all students, regardless of their background or circumstances, to be able to achieve those outcomes that we think are important. And I was also really, impressed with the questions and answers too, and really like the one question or statement about trying to get away from this deficit thinking, right? It's really the gap is really driven by opportunity. We're talking about students that have been traditionally underserved, and our goal is to try to do right by them. So I'll stop there. I'm very excited. As I said, I've been doing this work for about 20 years, and we have really tried to bring together all of the really strong analyses that we've done in many other states and apply all of them to Delaware. So thanks for listening, and we look forward to your questions.
All right, and really quickly, I'm going to give a brief overview about our data collection activities and the analyses that we'll do based on that data that we collect. So on the top here in the green, you see the data collection activities, and the first set of data collection activities is just a policy and document scan. So we're doing a deep dive into Delaware's laws and statutes, as well as the different documents that different organizations have put out, such as yourself, to understand kind of what's going on with the current funding system in Delaware. The second data collection activity is just gathering a bunch of extant administrative data. All of the data that we're using for this study is aggregated to the school or district level, and we've been able to collect a lot of that through publicly available sources, things like student achievement, different other educational outcomes such as graduation rates, chronic absenteeism, suspension rates. We've also collected fiscal data, given that this is an evaluation of the state's funding system. That's a very important piece of the data. So we've collected fiscal data from the past 5 years that allows us to attribute spending to schools. We also are gathering data on just the school characteristics around the state, including the different types of student demographic information, the percentage of students who are English learners, special education students, and low-income students, as well as other characteristics of the schools, including the grade levels served, whether they are a special type of school in any way, and the geographic information where they're located and whether they're in urban or rural areas and things like that. So that's all of the administrative data that we're collecting, and I'll say a little bit more about how we're using that in the data analysis activities. But our third set of data collection activities is primary data collection, and that's coming in two forms for this study. First, we're conducting interviews with all district and charter leaders in the state to understand their perspectives about the current system and to understand the ins and outs of the fiscal data that we're collecting. And then the second is through panels of experts. So we'll be recruiting expert educators throughout the state to convene on 6 different panels, and we'll use those panels to allow those experts to specify resources that would be required to achieve an adequate outcome in a set of prototypical schools. So we'll have different exercises that describe a type of school. So an elementary school with a certain level of enrollment, a certain level of low income EL, students with disabilities, and we're going to ask the panel, what is it going to take to meet the needs of these students adequately? And then we have a set of these exercises of different schools where we vary school level of student needs, different contexts such as school size. And through these different exercises, we have the set of resources that it would take to meet the needs of students at all of these different types of schools. And through that we can assign costs to those resources and come up with an estimate of adequacy in the state. So I kind of jumped the gun on the analysis for that one, but let me go through the bottom row here and talk a little bit about the analyses that we'll be planning on doing. And on the left side is a box called Understanding Local Context. So that's just a deep dive into the current system. We want to have a deep understanding of what the state is currently doing so that we have a basis for making recommendations for what needs to change. The second set of analysis is a state comparative analysis. So we're doing a scan of education funding formulas across all 50 states to understand the mechanisms by which different states address or differentiate funding for different types of schools. So certain states, for example, have weighted formulas where they use weights to differentiate funding for economic disadvantage or for English learners or for students with disabilities. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at across all 50 states. How are they differentiating funding across their schools? And then we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into some comparison states to look at some states in Delaware's geographic region more closely to come up with some potential alternative funding arrangements or funding formulas that Delaware could potentially use going forward. Moving to the right, one of the main analyses we'll be doing is called a cost function adequacy analysis. That is going to be using the administrative data that we're collecting. And really that's a statistical method to link together student outcomes, school contexts and student needs, and education funding to come up with an estimate of what will it cost, what will it take to meet educational goals in the state for all schools? How much funding will it take to meet a set of target outcomes for all of the schools in the state with the different needs that they have and the different contexts that they have? Along with that, we'll do an equity analysis to examine how existing levels of funding are distributed across schools with respect to student need. Are school districts that have more low-income students receiving additional funding compared to schools and districts that have fewer low-income students? So that's the kind of thing we'll look at the equity analysis. Moving to the right, we're going to do a comparative analysis between charters and districts to understand whether charter schools have different levels of funding compared to district schools. And then moving to the right again is the professional judgment approach, which I already described, where we convene these panels of experts and have them specify resources that it would take to achieve an adequate education. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at the perceptions of the current system using the interviews that we're conducting with district and charter leaders, as well as some of the documents that we're collecting from organizations such as yourselves. So I will pause there and see if Jesse has anything to add to that, and then we can open it up for questions that you all might have about our study.
I don't have anything really to add other than the cost function approach and the professional judgment approach are two of the main approaches that have been used for the last several decades to do this type of analysis. So they give you different answers in different ways. You can think of the cost function as more of a top-down. We're using this data that's already at the school level for spending and student needs, et cetera. Whereas the professional judgment approach is really relying on information from those practitioners who are closest to the students being served. And they're specifying the programs and the resources they deem necessary to be able to provide educational adequacy. And then as researchers, we have to cost that from the bottom up. So they provide you with different numbers. You can think of them as bounds using two different approaches. And the professional judgment approach, in some ways, provides you more detail on what the practitioners feel are the most effective practices, which is very interesting. we're not going to say that these should be prescribed at all but it's just a different way to get at the same question. So that's all that I wanted to add. I think Drew did a great job.
Yeah, it's really, really helpful to be able to understand how you're approaching this. I was just gonna add just a comment and a note that you're here sort of through the recommendation of our settlement committee. I wanted to make sure to acknowledge Aaron Bass and Chuck Longfellow for encouraging us to have you present to the full group. I think this is information that we all really need to be aware of, and obviously as a result of that settlement, that working group is monitoring for us. So thank you. And I will pause to see if we've got any. Right, we'll make sure that the PowerPoint is together with the rest of our materials from the meeting when we post those. Okay. All right, well, I don't see any hands or any further questions. I think it's clear, obviously, we have a ways yet to go. And I hope that we'll be able to hear from you again, as things progress further.
Yes, sounds good. Thank you for having us. And like I said at the beginning, if any of you are part of other stakeholder organizations and you would like us to come talk to your group, feel free to send me an email. I put my email in the chat. And as Jesse reminded me, we also have an analysis plan, so I can share that with Haley as well, so that you all have a more detailed analysis plan that describes what we'll be doing in the study.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Wonderful. Okay, great. So our next guest is familiar to all. So we know there's been a lot of news, a lot of action around the Wilmington Learning Collaborative effort. And so before I hand it over to Jim, just wanted to say personally, sort of a statement of congratulations. I've said that to you already directly, but I think we all know from, the updates that we've received here through the consortium, what a long road it's been, so much engagement with stakeholders to ultimately arrive at this point where the collaborative has now been approved. So I know we're all sort of excited to see where we go from here. And I think as a consortium, we are getting lots and lots of questions about how we, articulate the relationship between the two entities. Obviously, this turn of events is very new, so we'll have more to report on that in the future. But for now, Jim, I'll just let you take it from here and talk about where things now stand with the Learning Collaborative.
So first of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me and for those kind words, Senator Lockman. We certainly appreciate it. I know that some of my other counterparts are on or in the meeting as well. And so first, I think I'd be remiss if we didn't start with the excitement that we have with the affirmative vote from all three districts, but not only the affirmative vote, but the affirmative vote that was done unanimously across all three. Understanding all the work that went into I don't want to call it back and forth, that sounds more negative, and someone talked about not dealing in a deficit mindset, but just the collaboration. When we talk about WLC, the biggest word is the collaborative, and us collaborating back and forth, hearing from each other. I'm going to say disagreeing without becoming disagreeable, and working to get to a point where we've come up with something that's certainly not perfect, but at least is a stepping stone to do something for our most underserved population in the city of Wilmington. Our next steps, though, I don't want to say the hard work is set to begin, because that minimizes the amount of work that it took for us to get here. But I'm going to say the second round of hard work begins, because we've got to do two things. I would argue that of all the things that I heard from all three board meetings was the appreciation for DOE, OGov, collaborating with the number of different folks and gathering feedback. And so how do we maintain that as we move this forward? And so the next step is developing those next steps, but making sure that we put a priority on those next steps, that we're prioritizing them, but that again doesn't come from my office or Dr. Hollidick's office, that it comes from a collaboration between those three boards that have now voted to collaborate with us. So we tentatively have a meeting on the books to start looking at what are those things that we need to prioritize to get those done. I don't want to say that the delay put us behind in terms of the original vote was expected in June or anticipated in June or July. I think the delay in moving that vote to October enabled us to get to where we are. I don't know that we would have been able to do that if we had voted in June or July. So I think that additional time allowed for additional conversation, additional insight, additional research. And so, but that also says like, we still are in a time crunch in a sense that we want to get this done in a reasonable time fashion. So how do we prioritize what we're doing, making sure that we put those things in priority order, but makes sense for moving this forward and continuing to collaborate, right? So that's where we are at this point. Again, I believe all three of the superintendents were on. I sent them an email either yesterday or today to ensure that they understood that for this meeting, it's not my agenda, it's our agenda. And what are the things that they would like to see on that as we start to develop what happens in that meeting.
Great. Any questions? I'm sure all of our superintendents in particular would love to talk about the WLC for a few more minutes, as if you haven't already. But certainly would be happy to open it up for any thoughts or questions folks have. Okay. All right. Well, oh, we have a hand. All right. Tika.
I should have just unmuted myself and talked like normal. It took me too long to find that button. But I had a question regarding some thoughts, because I know that there was many community conversations around a high school and different opportunities for a high school. So I had a thought over the weekend after reading several articles about a local Wilmington high school that was struggling, which is Great Oaks. And I thought that that could potentially be a perfect pilot for adding a high school to this endeavor. And while it doesn't have to be the final piece, it could be a great starting point to at least have conversations. I believe that the population of that school mirrors many of the students that we're trying to capture and lift up. So I just kind of want to add that into thought and hope that potentially in the future we could have some more conversation around that.
So during the process of communicating and collaborating, the high school option or the high school issue came up across the board, and we made it very clear that we are aware of it, but we also knew that trying to bite off more than we could chew in one time could cause an issue. So I believe Dr. Hollidick made a statement that once we get this approved, with the positive assumption was that would be one of my main new focuses would be, or foci, I guess is the proper way of saying that, would be to look at the high school piece, even to form a committee, because again, keeping that collaborative approach into what could be an option. So that will be on our list, I'm sure of. I believe on one of the superintendent's responses, it was the high school option. And what are we going to do to look at that? Where's that fit on those priorities in terms of getting this moving right away would be the piece that we would have to talk about first.
Well, any support you need, please let me know.
I appreciate it. I think I saw a question from someone around the ED options. Again, we obviously know that person is essential to the operation of and the management of the WLC. But what those options are to be determined. We've made it very clear that we would not be making that selection that would come from the board. So I think when I talked about prioritizing, I think getting the nonprofit, the board, and then the process for selecting an executive director in that order most likely. But again, I don't speak on behalf of all those stakeholders.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from consortium members? Before we move, we will move shortly into public comment for anyone else. Well, again, I just wanted to express, my, I've been very impressed, obviously, with the process. And I'm just thankful to you all for your persistence, and to, of course, the school boards themselves, for casting those votes. I think obviously the consortium very much shares the same goals that I think have been laid out for the WLC, different origin stories and governing structures, but obviously, looking to pull in the same direction. So excited to hear more as things progress. And with that, Matt, did you have any other closing thoughts before we open it up to public comment?
Nope.
Okay, that's easy. All right. So if anyone not part of the consortium would like to offer a couple of minutes of public comment, you can raise your hand. You can put your name in the chat, or if neither of those functions are available to you, sort of give us a shout and we will give you, I believe our time is normally up to 3 minutes to comment, since we're beginning to run past our end time. And so I think, Haley, will you keep an eye out on that for a moment?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
I'm not seeing any hands or names in the chat.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for being here, for being attentive. Look out for information soon. Obviously, we talked about the work that we have done. We want to make sure.
Hey,
Yep.
Sorry, Monica Freeman just put her name in the chat for public comment.
Perfect. Well, good thing I just was babbling on. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you. I did just add myself. I wasn't going to speak, but then I said, I think I would sit back later and be remiss that I did not take an opportunity to say something. I was 13 years with Christina School District, and just recently in the last month joined the Great Oaks Charter School staff. Although we have a great deal of challenges, I can honestly say I joined a group of people that I really believe in. I believe in the people that are working in the school, with the school, and most importantly, I believe in those students. One thing I can say is our students come to school, and that is really hard to get students at the 9 to 12 grade. Once they hit 16 and they have all these different obstacles, and they are in Wilmington, and they're poverty, and their parents are not raising them, and they have all of these things working against them. And one thing that they do is come to see us every day. So I just said, I've got to try my best to keep this school open and available for students in the city of Wilmington. So there are a lot of things on the line, and I'm not sure if everybody is aware. DOE put us on a final review. I joined the team, and then I started on that Monday, and that Tuesday I found out we were on final review. And I said, oh, gracious. Okay, we've got more and more and more work to do, but there's a group of people that really want to do the work, and there are students that really, really need us and want us there. So my plea is for anyone available to anything that is available to help us to continue to serve our city students. It would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
And I believe we have one more. Sorry, I can't see the participants. Yes. I don't see a
We have
hand.
Amy. Amy has her
Yes,
hand
there's a hand
raised.
raised. Okay. Go ahead. We'll start the clock.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
I think I'm showing you my living room. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop my video. Hi, my name is Amy Gallagher, and just after the last speaker kind of brought up Great Oaks, that I think that's really appropriate to think about charters in relation to the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. I reached out to John Sheehan to see if he could try to connect to, for example, Thomas Edison, because that's 700 kids in the city, and the outcomes of the charters. And today I saw on the meeting calendar that Thomas Edison has a review process going on with their charter as well, and looking at the proficiency rates, for these charters, they're on par with Warner and other schools, within the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. So there's so many kids, and now that it's passed and the resources are on the table, and what the last speaker was speaking to, how can they be helped and supported if we don't make a real effort to make the charters feel welcome for the WLC. I think it's a missed opportunity at this point. So that's my main point. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Glad to have you with us. Okay. Don't think I see any other hands. So again, thank you all for being with us tonight and for being part of the team, and for entertaining Jack for an hour or so. He enjoyed hearing all the information too. And we will send out information soon about our in-person convening, which I'm really looking forward to. It makes all the difference, I think, to really dig into some visioning for the coming year for Redding as well. Make sure that we are doing all the work that we can and know needs to be done. So without anything further, I think we can adjourn. Oh, Gesundheit.
Good
All
night.
right.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.